Namaste Friends, welcome back to the web technology video learning series. So far we have skimmed through the surface of HTML and CSS. Today we'll start skimming the surface of JavaScript. JavaScript is a programming language and it is essentially conforming to a script specification by the standards body called ECMA script. JS is often used the short form of this language, JavaScript. Along with the HTML and CSS, JavaScript is one of the core technologies of the web. With HTML, we present the content. With CSS, we present the styling. And with JavaScript, we provide the dynamism. Together, we make very interactive web pages. Not just for web pages, it is also used for many other things. It is one of the most popular programming languages in the world right now. The TOB index shows that it is somewhere in top 2 or top 3, with the question of whether it is really the top 1 or not. JavaScript, from a technical point of view, is a high-level, interpreted, object-oriented, weakly typed and event-driven programming language. What do each of these mean? High-level language means we deal with the programming constructs that are at a higher level, which are more user perceivable. Unlike a machine language such as a low-level language such as assembly language or so, it is higher than even C. It is interpreted because it is not executed directly on the hardware. There is a interpreter, typically called a virtual machine, which reads the JavaScript instructions and executes one by one, which is also why it is called a scripting language. It is object oriented because it has objects and you can inherit them and then you can create objects out of it and then play with it. It is weakly typed because unlike C or C++ or even Java for that matter, the variables are not typed strictly. You can have a variable which holds an integer value now and then change it to a value, and then after some time it can start holding a string. So only when it is really used, then the type comes into play. That is why it is a weakly typed language. JavaScript is event driven because it is invoked primarily on events that are generated from user actions. We need to understand each of these words a little bit carefully. So if required, take a pause and then try to understand each of these words and then see what they mean. JavaScript adds dynamism to the web documents. What is dynamic? Dynamism is a way of interacting with the user. For example, user may, in the simplest of the examples, JavaScript is used to validate the forms that are filled out on HTML pages. Imagine you have a form where age is to be filled out and only the legal age for application in the form are between 18 and 45, nothing more, nothing less. If user fills out, let's say, the value 100, then you can use JavaScript to find that out and then alert the user before the form data is sent back to the server. Even more, you can highlight the specific field in the form, let's say with a red rectangle or with a pop-up dialog that says this field of the form has a illegal value or invalid value. So all this is dynamism in the sense that these are all different actions that are coming based on user interaction. The current JavaScript standard is ECMA script 2021. So one of the things that I would like to tell you is most of the the textbooks that are referred to in schools are old. They refer to ECMS script or JavaScript older than 2010. So which means that some of the things that you are going to learn now are not going to be available in the textbooks that are there. So which is okay, because the JavaScript support in each of the browsers is almost the latest, though they are almost latest, so you will be able to use them. Nevertheless, you should understand that JavaScript as a standard has been evolving ever since it has been invented first. 2009 or so, we have the late ECMS script standard 5, which is JavaScript 5. 2014 or 15, we have JavaScript standard 6. And then since then, we have been having annual additions to the standard. It is considered as a living standard. Today, the current standard is ECMS script 2021, released sometime in June this year, 2021. Despite the similarity in name, Java and JavaScript are two different languages. They are not same, they are completely different. They may have similarities in terms of programming, but however, they are different languages. Until recently, JavaScript was a client-side language, which meant that it was used predominantly only in the browser with nowhere else. However, these days we see JavaScript also on the PCs. One of the most popular IDEs that we have is built completely in JavaScript. It is also on the server. It is used as a server-side scripting as well. So JavaScript has gained immense popularity on areas which are not its traditional forte, which is the browser. So learning JavaScript is very good, and it holds good in securing necessary skills outside that are required outside. Now let's look at what is DHTML, because this is one of the textbook topics that we have in syllabi. DHTML is nothing but a set of technologies that are aimed at providing interactive user experience, some of which we have already talked about. There are four such technologies. One is HTML, hypertext markup language; CSS, the style sheets; JS, which is the JavaScript, that's the focus of our lessons now; and DOM, document object model. JavaScript, HTML, and DOM go hand in hand. We'll learn about DOM shortly. So all these things together form a term called DHTML. So whenever you hear that there is a DHTML, somebody wants DHTML, or there is let's say a question in exam paper that says what is DHTML, the answer is really that these are things that you already know, excepting DOM, which we'll cover shortly. Then there will be sometimes a question in our mind like, what is the difference between DHTML and HTML? First obvious answer is there are three other technologies. But functionally speaking, HTML is purely static in the sense that once the HTML is available, there is no change. Whereas DHTML, basically there is a change. You can use JavaScript and DOM and CSS to change the appearance, to provide interactivity. All that stuff is possible with DHTML. And DHTML is not limited just to the browser. It may also go back to the server with server-side scripting, and also it may interact with database, for example, to authenticate a user and so on and so forth. So DHTML is having a wider range in terms of coverage than what simple HTML is. Let's look at DOM. DOM is an abbreviation for document object model. What is really DOM? Whenever a browser loads a HTML file into the memory, along with all the CSS and stuff, it internally creates a tree representation of the structure of the HTML. This structure is allowed to be queried and manipulated through some API. This tree structure is called the document object model. The API that are used for querying and manipulation are called DOM APIs. These are available in JavaScript. These DOM APIs form the base for validation, as we'll see in our subsequent lessons. The tree is not really a real tree. It's a logical tree of all the HTML structure. Each branch of the tree ends in a node, and each node contains objects. You can see a representative tree on the right hand side. This is a picture from the Wikipedia. As I said, the DOM allows programmatic access to the tree, with which we can change the structure of the tree. You can move elements from one node to the another node, from one branch to another branch, change the style of the tree to a given element. For example, in the form validation we talked about a few minutes ago, we can highlight the invalid value within a given text box. Right? We can change the style, or we can even change the content. We can change how a particular paragraph is worded, and so on and so forth. All this is possible because the DOM is available through a API, which is what we are calling it as programmatic access. So that's a very brief introduction to JavaScript for today. I hope you understood what really JavaScript is and where it may be used for. In our subsequent classes, we'll start getting into the language specifics of JavaScript and how to use them. Thank you.